Well, I first met Paul when we were in college and we were about 18 years old. Paul was then the finance manager of the management club in San Beda College, and I was the president of the Management Association of Saints Co. Yung pong Paul na kilala nyo ngayon is already a fashionista Paul. High-end ang taste, branded ang suot. Pero nung una ko pong na-meet si Paul when we were second year college, believe it or not, is a far cry from the fashionable Paul now. I must say Paul is a late bloomer. Hindi po siya maporma. In fact, he was so straight thin with curly short hair and would most of the time wear an Alaska-type round neck t-shirt plus a tight flared pants. He is the typical nerd, always carrying a book and a pen. Yung tipong laging laman ng library. Never the kind who will act aggressively, as he seems to be always reserved and mild-mannered. For some reason, I singled him out as someone I feel I can be safe. Someone na parang I'd be very comfortable. Parang magkapatid lang ang tulingan namin kasi he was always dependable kind. For this, I consider him my best friend. We have a running joke. He would always tell me, Kutchie, please lang, huwag na huwag mo lang ma-post sa FB ang forma ko nung araw. Pakisunog please, and never use that as a blackmail material. While we were in college, I discovered a lot of things about Paul. One is that he's very talented and creative. He is a brilliant writer, and at the time, a budding and passionate photographer. Una, it was just like a hobby, but then his photos would always win in school competitions. He was also our designated official photo for school activities. Member of the Focalens in San Beda, I had no inkling that someday, Paul will be a big wedding industry player as a professional photographer. Paul is also an achiever, a Class A student who graduated with honors. Always driven and focused, he will always do his best in whatever he sets his eyes on. After graduation, we were hired by Far East Bank, and at the same time, Paul took a master's degree in AIM. He is such a multitasker, and as usual, Paul is very dedicated to his work. Never the one who watches the clock, as he is always to make sure all his work is done before he leaves the office. Kahit mag-overtime pa siya without pay. Sobrang sipag. That's why it's such a surprise to me that through the years, he will be very successful. Paul is the kind of friend na kahit hindi kami nakapag-usap in months, alam mong nandyan lang siya. May mga tawag ako dyan na biglaan. And yet, it's just like old times. In fact, he rose to a high-level position in Allied Bank as Senior Vice President, and yet he is still the old Paul I know. Mga trivial questions ko, like calling him up with mundane questions like, Paul, traffic ba sa EDSA? Paul, alam ba ang telephone number ng MMDA? Paul, anong maganda, iPhone or Android? Or Paul, paki-waive mo naman ang annual fees ko. As always, he will pick up my calls, even in the middle of a meeting, only to find out that I'm asking a very trivial question. And he'd say, Kutchie, nasa gitna ako ng meeting. At sa tanong mo, hindi mo na ginalang ang Vice President position ko. Ginagawa ko daw kasi siyang Yellow Pages and Secretary. Of course, that said with dry wit and humor, because Paul is really a comedian. But then I know he's always just a call away anytime. Ganyan si Paul. Kahit ang taas na ng posisyon, hindi siya nagbabago inside. As always, the Paul I knew when we were in college. Paul was the reason why I'm in the wedding industry. I consider him my mentor. He knows that during our college days, we organized events and he said, why don't you become a wedding planner? And so he asked me to join a small bridal fair in Rockwell and he shared his booth with me. Secret lang po, he gave me a briefing on how it goes, lent me wedding albums and visual aids, and told me, you know, you just pretend you did that wedding. And then that was the first bridal fair. And you know, amazingly, I got bookings in that fair. The rest is history. I'd be grateful for Paul for pushing me that I can do it, for recognizing my talents, and believing in my capacity. Paul is also a very thoughtful person. He's ninong to my son Patrick, who passed away 2 years ago. The following day that my son passed on, he called me up and told me he needs materials for an audiovisual presentation, as he wanted to do a tribute video for Patrick. He told me there is no time to waste, as I should stay focused on giving my son a beautiful wake. I'm grateful to Fall for all the effort he did for that beautiful video and reminding me to be strong. To Leslie, my inaanak Chio and Paolo, I know how wonderful Fall is as a husband and dad in spite of his workload. I know he manages to provide you ample banding time in spite of his load. You know, Gio and Paolo, you're very lucky kids to have a father like Fall. With all his achievements, I know he makes you proud. I'm sure also the missing part is hardest, but don't worry, he will always be beside you for guidance. He will never leave your side. Believe me, as we have felt and experienced it with Patrick, our son. Just remember that Peter and I will be here for you anytime. Kahit anong mangyari, do not hesitate to call us. I will never find a great friend like Fall, always the person I go to when I just need someone to listen to my problems, big or small. Alam ni Fall I can be makulit, and yet he is patient. I feel lucky and very blessed to be given a friend like Fall, who's been like a kuya to me. Fall has always been consistent in the sincerity and warmth of his friendship. During my 10th year anniversary as a planner, you were my special guest and Toastmaster. You have always been supportive and always cheering me on. And so I'd like to say, cheers to you, Fall, and thank you so much for